Last night, I was casually scrolling through the horror page on Netflix, sloshed on my couch, drinking my melatonin tea, when a specific title and image caught my eye. I clicked and watched the whole movie, and by the end, I was absolutely certain that that was the worst horror movie the app has ever seen and will likely ever see. So please, if you're interested, tag along as I summarize and analyze what I believe to be the shittiest horror movie on Netflix. Soul Reaper is a 2019 horror movie directed by a guy called Bob Pipe. And I know it might come to you as a surprise, but there really is no information about this movie on the internet. The only interesting thing I was able to find is actually the IMDB page for the movie, in which there's a trivia section where it is claimed that the director, like I said, Bob Pipe, has said that the movie is a direct response to the UK Brexit fiasco. So please keep that in mind while I summarize the movie. The movie opens with a man named Will and his girlfriend arriving at a very desolate and rundown cabin in the middle of the woods. A guy named Charlie invited them to his bachelor party. The girlfriend is pissed, but Will insists it must be a prank from Charlie. She cannot believe that their friend chose such a shit location for his party. And almost as soon as they enter the cabin, they get attacked by something or someone. This scene cracks me up. They hear like a sound, and there's a man clearly coming for them with some kind of tool, and it's like 2 feet away. And the girl looks at Will and she goes, "Babe, I think we should go." "Bitch, I think it's too late, and now you're both gonna die." We get this beautiful title card, and then we cut to the rest of the guests that are invited to the bachelor party, and they're arriving by car. And as you can clearly see, this looks like the typical horror movie friend group. They're all kind of chatting up, laughing, the usual. In the car, there's Tina, then there's Alex, who kind of reminds me of that one comedian that pops up sometimes on my reels on Instagram.
You just said perform Jew?
In the back, you can see there's Steve, the blonde guy, and the guy filming is actually called Mike, and the girl driving is called Mona, and she's kinda bad. For now, they're simply having a good time and traveling to the party's location. While traveling, Mike tells everybody that he has to take a crap, and so they stop at a local pub called the Jolly Hangman. That's right, folks, you heard me right, a local pub. The movie takes place in England, but worry not, you won't have to hear the annoying accent much, as the main cast is all from the States. They came into the UK simply to attend the Charlie's bachelor party. Everybody, which is like 5 people inside the pub, is weirdly hostile for no reason at all. My best guess is because they're American and they can somehow smell that. The guys don't look inherently American. What's up with that? Also, just a funny detail that I couldn't stop watching. You have no idea how many times I've seen this movie. But all the windows inside the pub are covered by some kind of plastic, and it doesn't feel like a deliberate decision, so I feel like they just kind of forgot they were there and they shot anyways. But that's besides the point. They speak to the owners of the bar, a man and a woman who kind of resemble hobbits, kind of like Sam and Frodo, or the other 2 guys. God, I love those 2 guys, man. Mike asks if he can use the bathroom and he gets roasted because he didn't call it the loo, which I had never heard before, ever. But apparently it's a word, they use it in England, so the more you know. Alex orders drinks for all of them, but everybody before drinking them hesitates as if they knew something was up. I feel like the movie makers want to make you feel like these drinks are not appetizing, but to me they look more than fine, and I have no idea why they were afraid of drinking them. The girl even says that the cider is made by them, so it's homemade. Of course though, because the movie has to go on, Alex takes a very small sip of the cider and instantly has to throw up into the bathroom. In there, he thinks he sees Charlie, but we can clearly see it's just a shadow, so what the fuck are you talking about, man? We can clearly see it's just a shadow. And this may be because before coming into the pub, Alex actually smoked a joint by himself. Because this is gonna be brought up later, but he's kind of like a stoner. The movie really wants you to know that. He's like paranoid and high, so he may be tweaking. Before leaving, the guys mention that they're gonna be staying at a cabin, and the whole pub freezes. One guy, who we're gonna call Carl from now on for no reason at all, warns them not to go because the cabin is cursed. Another guy, who we will call Paul for actual no reason this time, dismisses these accusations as nonsense. But it seems very ungenuine, so much so that like it comes off as like ironic, even though it's not supposed to be. So we get a sense that he's lying. The two guys, Carl and Paul, go back and forth arguing about the cabin, while our group just stands there awkwardly. Eventually they leave anyways, and while driving off, they look back and they see Carl just standing there in the middle of the road. We quickly cut to Carl's perspective, and it looks like he's been following them on the road for a while now. Does this guy not own like a car? He looks like he's 40. Is he just fucking wasted in the middle of the day and responsible enough not to drive? While he's walking on the middle of the road, Paul and some other friends pull up on him with a black SUV. They tell Carl not to interfere and that the plan is already in motion. The group of Americans has to die. It seems that Carl wants to stop whatever sacrifice is going on, and so Paul calls a guy with like a huge hammer from his SUV to deal with Carl, who kind of looks like Rick Owens. Carl somehow is carrying a smaller hammer of his own, with which he beats the living shit out of all the guys. And guys, this movie had a $200,000 budget. I can only imagine they spent about $0 for this scene. There's not even fake blood, it's just all added in post. It just kind of looks like they're fake slapping each other, and then you know they fall to the ground. Whatever. Paul is now injured and on the floor, and it's bleeding with Carl. He says that if the sacrifice doesn't happen, something way worse will. And Carl answers by saying he wants the chaos. Whatever that means. Back at the cabin, the group finally arrives. And I know this is supposed to be like a rundown, creepy cabin, and it for sure is, but how the fuck were these 7 adult people meant to sleep here? It's a shithole. There's one bed. They immediately notice that Charlie's not there, so Mike and Mona go and look for him, just out in the woods, like if it was like a missing dog or like a cat. Luckily, just a couple of feet off the cabin, they find like a small structure, and inside Mike finds a very creepy painting of an old man, and it's signed, no joke, the fucking Soul Reaper. Very subtle. By the way, this is gonna come up later, but this painting and the old man portrayed in it, they're never brought up again. There's no explanation. They bring the painting to the cabin to show all the others, and they all think it's a prank by Charlie. You're gonna start to see a pattern soon. While discussing if it's actually a prank or something else, 2 new people show up. And they're apparently part of the friend group, even though the guy looks to be like 20 years older than anybody else. It's a guy and a girl, they're a couple. The guy is called Delbert and the girl is called Maria. And we're never given any explicit explanation to why they show up late. And I feel like it was just used as an excuse to have this very cheap fake jump scare happen to the characters. You're gonna see this, but every time a new character shows up, there's gonna be some very gimmicky, stupid jump scare happening that of course leads to nothing. After a couple of minutes, some weird sounds are heard outside, which I'm pretty sure is just the noise that bears make, sped up. Delbert pulls out a massive sword from his backpack and goes to check out what the noise is. Everybody else is scared shitless and staying in the cabin, which is like, come on guys, there's like 7 of you. 1 of you has a fucking sword. They're like preschoolers, man, I tell you. But eventually the tension is broken by Charlie finally showing up. Like I said before, there's another weird fake jump scare pranks thing, and everybody's happy and just forgets about the sounds they heard like 2 minutes ago. Charlie, we can gather, is kind of a hothead and kind of like a prankster, assuming at least, since every small thing that happens in this movie is blamed on being a prank from Charlie. He's also black, which kind of threw me off. You know, group of white guys waiting on a guy named Charlie, and he's British. No, but seriously, he has a very strong British accent. After a short while, a new character shows up via, once again, small jump scare. I already don't want to do this. He's allegedly the owner of the cabin, and it's a strange man named Ian with this weird tracksuit and sunglasses, even though we all know in England it's never sunny, it's always raining. After he leaves, everybody decides to go and have a swim at the lake. Actually, everybody except Steve, the blonde guy, who decides to stay back. Again, no real explanation. I think he's just kind of a pussy. Also, just before leaving, Charlie gives him some weird, mysterious pill and tells him to swallow it, which he does without question, which I thought was kind of odd. Is it drugs? Is it like a Xanax? Why is he taking it by himself? Again, it's never explained. Anyways, the rest of the group is at the lake and decides to dive in. Everybody but Alex, who decides to stay back to smoke a joint on the dock. Once again, this movie really wants you to know that this guy smokes weed and he's a stoner. Isn't that relatable? Ian is seen sneaking around and hiding in the bushes, watching over them. So we get a sense that something's up. Maria suddenly starts struggling in the water as if something grabbed her. And everybody just kind of stands there. Even her supposed husband, who's like 3 feet away. Since nobody is doing anything, Ian comes out of the bushes and dives into the lake fully clothed to go and save her. Once outside the water, she thanks him and he responds by saying, "You guys are gonna save everybody," but in Spanish, so nobody understands. Again, we're gonna talk about this in length in the analysis section, but this scene is fucking insane. First of all, why is nobody fucking saving her? Her husband is like 2 feet away. I know, dude, there's Mona and there's Tina, who looks sexier than your wife, but you should really fucking go and save her. And second, which is most important, I feel like, why does nobody ask anything about Ian just being there to save her? Because once they come out, he says this dumb shit in Spanish and then he just moves on. Nobody bats an eye. From the guy's perspective, this must look insane. Just imagine you're like in the woods, in a random body of water. Nobody's supposed to be around. Your friend starts to struggle in the water. You're there, you can't save him, maybe you're too far, I don't know. And some guy just comes out the bush and saves him. Like, you would ask questions. You would be like, what the fuck were you doing here? Why? They should have asked more questions. They're asking to die. Once everybody's outside, Delbert claims to see something or someone on the other shore of the lake, which, I don't know, I paused the movie, I can't really see shit. Maybe there's like a tiny shadow. Anyways, he runs off very scared, and of course his partner Maria follows up, which is like, okay dude, what are you, like 5? What the fuck is going on? They end up in the middle of the woods trying to come back to the cabin, and they clearly see somebody, but Maria still thinks that it's a prank from Charlie. Did you catch on to the pattern here? Are you connecting the dots? Is it all just a prank? Back at the cabin, if you remember, there's Steve, the blonde guy, who's just standing there. And he hears knocking at the door, goes and sees that there's no one, and so he goes outside to investigate. He somehow winds up into a deeper part of the woods, where he starts to hear some weird whisper and his vision starts to get blurry. I have no idea why. I think it may be from the pill that Charlie gave him. But once again, if you don't explain what the pill is, I have no idea. It could have been just like a dafalgan or something for, period pain. Period cramps, he may be transgender. We have no idea. He might just freeze tomato sauce and put it up his ass. He keeps going into the woods up until he sees some kind of weird circle artifact. It kind of reminds me of the Blair Witch Project, and he rightfully decides to go the fuck back. Again, this scene lacks any kind of sense. Why would you just stumble randomly searching for somebody who may have knocked on your door? I feel like you would just go outside, check the door, check maybe behind the house, and then just come back. It makes no sense whatsoever. While he's still coming back, Delbert and Maria get to the cabin and get attacked by something or someone once again, but this time he's wearing a weird mask, guys. Steve comes back just in time to find there's nothing left apart the beanies from Delbert and Maria, just standing there on the floor, and decides that the best course of action is just to take a nap. Again, I'm not sure if he's supposed to be under some kind of influence of drugs or pills, but I feel like if I was on heroin, I would make better decision than this man. It is now dark, and we cut to the larger group which was at the lake, and the guys are now sitting around a campfire, joking around and having a good time. Charlie pulls out a weird bottle of some undisclosed alcohol. Allegedly, it contains some weird scent that he picked up from one of his travels in Hawaii. Nevertheless, the guys pass the bottle around and take some big swigs. Be careful, guys, it would sure suck if it was some kind of incapacitating drug, guys. As they're drinking, the guys start to ask Charlie about his future wife, because remember, this is about a bachelor party, so Charlie is gonna have to get married at some point. He gives some very unspecific answers, so we're led to believe that there's no wife at all. And it feels like some of the guys picked that up too. So why did he invite you guys? Ask questions, you're not gonna survive this. But of course, they don't seem too bothered. And instead, Charlie starts to tell the supposed tale of the cursed land that they're standing on. He says that 9 years prior, 9 students went missing at the cabin, at which Tina says she's too scared and leaves for the cabin. What she does, mind you, this is just a little tangent, but she's scared. So naturally, the first thing she does is leave all of his friends to, walk down God knows how many minutes in some very dark woods to get to like a creepy, lonely cabin where the only guy she knows is there is actually Steve, who's having a fentanyl overdose, basically. I don't know, I feel like I would stay close to my friends and the fire if I was scared. That's just me, Tina, I don't know. If she wanted an excuse to go and flick her bean, she could have just said she was cold. But that's besides the point. Charlie continues the story by saying that billions and billions of years ago, monsters created the world, and that now these ancient creatures lie beneath the earth, stalking and spying humanity. He says that every 9 years, 9 souls must be fed to them in order to keep them asleep. If not, they would rise and destroy the world. So the normal, usual bachelor party stuff. Back at the cabin, Tina finally arrives and she sees Steve just lying there on the bed. Also, as a side note, imagine you're this dude, Steve, alright? You pay the price ticket from America to England, which I looked up and goes from $700 to $1,500 easily. You take the plane for about 12 hours, depending on the state. You step off the plane, you rent a car, you drive for God knows how long. And then finally, you get to the cabin where your friend's bachelor is. And then yes, you just lay inside the cabin, alone, for like 12 hours, while everybody's having a good time, maybe off a Xanax. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Who would do this shit? This is crazy. You just wasted like a week of your life doing nothing. Not even caring about the guy who invited you in the first place. Okay, sorry. As I was saying, Tina hears a sound and goes to check it out. Of course, she doesn't come back. So Steve gets up as well to go and see what's going on and gets attacked. So both of them are out. Once again cut to the campfire and it seems like the bottle was drugged. Crazy, I know. And the guys start to hallucinate. Alex imagines a new life where he's married and he has a kid. And this is actually like a very interesting scene where they put a lot of effort, I feel like, because it's shot really well. You see Alex go up to the child and it basically transforms into some kind of demon. Steve is hallucinating as well and he basically sees himself inside of a club, which is like, I know, dude, it fucking sucks. And Mike hallucinates Mona biting him, which is like, yeah, that sounds more like a dream than an hallucination. I would want that too, man. We see them all pass out, except Charlie, of course. The next morning, Mike, Alex, Mona, and Charlie wake up at the fire. They seem to realize that they were drugged, and they see that they all have this strange sign injury on their forehead, and a pretty serious one as they're all bleeding. They also can't seem to find their phones. They somehow still think it's a prank from Charlie, but while discussing they hear a scream. They follow it and it leads them back to the cabin, where they find Steve screaming for help, standing over Tina, who is motionless and presumed dead. They panic for a little bit and then they recompose themselves and they blame Charlie. Still thinking it's a prank, dude, I'm gonna go prank my friend and beat him up with a chair. I'm gonna go and kick pregnant women on the bus. That's my prank. I love pranking my friends and carving shit into their forehead. What the fuck are we talking about, dude? Either way, they don't really trust Charlie, so they tie him to a chair. Which is like, they're right. To us, the viewer, that is the right decision. But that's only because we know that Charlie is here to sacrifice them. But they got no proof. He also has the weird marking on his forehead. They suspect him only because of the crazy pranks that he used to pull, which is like, I wonder what kind of fucking pranks was this guy doing, like the 9/11 inside job or Pearl Harbor. What the fuck is going on here? Was the guy just going up to people and beating them up and calling in a prank and people ate that shit up? Anyways, Mona discovers that Tina isn't actually dead, she's just unconscious. They also finally realize that Delbert and Maria are missing. They kinda panic, but instead of going to the police or going away to find some help, they decide to split up. You know, Scooby-Doo style. Steve is staying at the cabin to look after Charlie, which is like, God forbid Steve goes outside. That could never happen. And the others split up to look for Delbert and Maria. Alex goes to the lake where he actually finds all of their phones in the water, so clearly somebody is out to get them. Mike goes back to the car where they find that the tires have been slashed. Mona, who before going away picks up a blowgun, God knows why it was in the cabin, is lining up a shot at the campfire thinking that she sees Charlie, but she gets startled and accidentally shoots Carl. Remember the guy from the bar, the guy from before? Who of course just passes out mere seconds before Mona is taken out by some bad guy off screen with a bat. At the cabin, Charlie convinces Steve to let him use the bathroom. It's just a wooden outhouse, where they then meet with Alex and Mike, now fully panicked and ready to leave, which is like, finally dude, motherfucker. I would have sprinted back to the road or the Jolly Hangman or whatever. Because a hole in your head is not a big deal, but if they slash your car and take away your phones, that's a real danger, guys. Before going away though, they decide that they have to get back to the cabin to get Tina, because she's unconscious. Alright, so much happened, so here's a quick recap of where everybody's at. Tina, like I said, is passed out at the cabin. Maria and Dumbler have been taken by someone, as well as Mona. Carl, the guy from the bar, is passed out near the campfire. Remember, Mona shot him with a blowgun. Charlie, Mike, Steve, and Alex are going to the cabin to get Tina and then get the fuck out. So yes, they finally reach the cabin, and there, waiting for them, is Ian. He's in like a wedding dress, holding like a massive stick. He says that the ceremony has begun and that their sacrifice will save the human race. He also says that the poison is still in their system. And as he's saying that, Steve, Mike, and Alex fall to the ground. Which is like, what poison, dude? What the fuck are you talking about? Is it just the bottle from the night before that's kicking in twice? And now, just as he's saying that makes no sense. That's actually... Also, like, Steve took the pill that maybe was the weird drug they took with the bottle. I have no idea. It's a very big stretch and a plot hole, I think. Charlie, who doesn't fall to ground, of course, reveals that it was all a setup and they're gonna be fed to the old ones, just like he told them in the story. But while he's talking, his identical twin shows up holding Mona's body. That's right, the reason why Mona thought it was him is because he has an identical twin, whose name is Jeff, by the way. I know, dude, sit down, have a glass of water. This may be the best plot twist in any movie I've ever seen in my life. Even Shutter Island. Yeah, fuck Scorsese's, fuck everything. But we shall continue. We learned that only a pair of twins can open up the portal in order to feed the souls to the ancient monsters. Of course, I'm talking about Charlie and Jeff. It seems Ian is the one who brought them together, and he also says that he's the Soul Reaper. Because, you know, get it? He snatches souls in order to feed them to these Lovecraftian monsters. I don't know, it's kind of a sinister name for a guy who basically saves the world every 9 years. I feel like the Priest would be kind of a good name. Doesn't make much sense, but I kind of like it. Okay, we hard cut to 9 people lying unconscious on the ground in a circle all around the portal. Oh, and look, that's Will and his girlfriend. Hope they're doing fine. The circle, which is the portal, contains some of the worst CGI man has ever seen, by the way. Prepare yourself, cause this scene is priceless and probably the main reason why I made this video. One by one, all of the guys start to wake up while Ian is singing some ancient sounding song. And you know, Steve keeps complaining cause he's hurt. Ian gets pissed and suggests that he's the first one to be thrown inside the portal, which is by miles the best scene in the movie. The delivery is really good. And I'm gonna be silent here for like just 5 seconds so you can actually appreciate the movie as it was intended. Yeah, dude, just kinda pretend like you're swimming on the green screen. Like this? Yeah, man, whatever, the movie's almost over, I don't give a fuck. I feel like this is gonna be the thumbnail of the video. Ian is trying to explain that if they're not sacrificed inside the portal, the old ones will rise and kill everybody, including them. So their best bet is to just die honorably, which is funny. Again, Ian is really good. The last standing is Stina, who's being held by Charlie, who suddenly changes his mind and doesn't want her to die, admitting that he's in love with her. Ian says that if she doesn't go in, Charlie has to go inside, just so it could be 9 souls. To which Charlie chucks in Ian and then Jeff inside the portal with great effortless strength. He's like the Hulk if he was black and British. Finally safe, Charlie says to Tina that she can trust him, but she rightfully has had enough, and she just kicks him inside the portal, leaving her as the sole survivor. She breaks down crying and hears some footsteps coming her way, and of course it's Carl, who screams, "I'm here to save you, I'm here to save you." And then he asks if the portal has been opened yet, which is like, yes, Carl, it has. It's been opened, it's been closed. You're like 20 minutes late. Fuck you. Kill yourself. Okay, so that was the basic plot, not so basic actually, plot of the movie. And before we continue, you probably noticed there's been a major change of scenery. That's because recording the first summary was physically and mentally maybe the most draining thing I've ever done in my life. So it's a new day, but I got the same shirt. Okay, I know that was a big mouthful, so let's try and extrapolate the core of the movie in order to understand it better. If you really think about it, basically it's just a group of guys who goes to stay at a cabin and, unbeknownst to them, are meant to be fed to some old ancient god creature in order to save the world. Does that maybe ring a bell to you? Because it does to me. I'm, of course, talking about the fact that the core idea behind the movie is very similar, if not identical, to another way more successful and popular movie that is called The Cabin in the Woods. The Cabin in the Woods came out in 2011 and became a cult classic almost instantly. The movie is funny and smart, and at times chilling, with some really good practical effects. Of course, The Cabin in the Woods movie had a much larger budget. For Christ's sake, one of the leads is actually Chris Hemsworth. That's the kind of production we're talking about. And the budget, of course, was actually $30 million. That is exactly 150 times our very humble, in comparison, Soul Reaper movie. So, you know, it makes sense. They're not the same. One is better because it was made with 150 times more money. But I still want to point out some things that I think could have been, reasonably done better here. And I still want to talk about the Cabin in the Woods movie because it's a really good comparison to really understand what the director could have done better with this Soul Reaper movie, actually. To me, and I feel like to many, many other people, one of, if not the best aspect of the Cabin in the Woods movie is actually the characters. They are simple, classic, high school stereotypes, but by leaning into them, the movie becomes really funny and meta. And of course, it's really hard not to mention my favorite character of the movie, and may I say, one of the best horror movie characters there's ever been. Of course, I'm talking about Marty. He is the king of stoners. He's paranoid, he's likable, and like I said, the movie does a great job at making him actually very likable. And of course, the result is I deeply cared about him. The stakes were high because I cared about the character. I did not want him to die. I wanted to see what was gonna happen to him. And of course, I know it helps that the guy playing Marty, who's called Franz Kranz, does a great job at interpreting the character, but still, I feel like he was written really well. Like I was hinting at before, Soul Reaper clearly takes some inspiration from The Cabin in the Woods, but fails to replicate the funny and somewhat relatable high school group that was probably one of the best parts of the more successful movie. To demonstrate this, I can tell you the only two guys that I can give any kind of characterizations to in the Soul Reaper movie are Alex, who is a blatant copy of Marty from The Cabin in the Woods, who's kind of like a stoner and paranoid, and then Steve, who's meant to be kind of like an introvert, but even then, it's not really clear what's going on with him. This, of course, is because the script and the dialogue for the movie are not great. You know, we're talking about a 300k, 200k budget. But also, and somewhat more importantly, the cast is massive. There's too many fucking characters. Think about it like this. In the original friend group, the one that we see in the car at the beginning, there's Alex, there's Steve, there's Mike, Tina, and Mona. Then, after a while, Dumbler and Maria join, then Charlie, then Ian, and also there's Carl, who's, doing his thing. So that's about 9 characters. How am I meant to care for 9 characters, man? How am I even meant to care for a character I don't even know? There's no time to really get to know any of them, because there's too many. At the top of my head, I cannot remember a single line spoken by either Mike, Maria, even, Mona. I think they should have just reduced the cast down a little bit, because what's the point of having a character on screen if I'm not even gonna care for him? And this is very exasperated in this movie because it's just so low budget and low quality. But this is a complaint I have for many movies that come out nowadays. Not to mention TV series like Stranger Things. As I lightly touched on before, The Cabin in the Woods was meant to be kind of a satirical and funny movie, and I feel like Soul Reaper was meant to be kind of the same, which brings me to another big critique I have about the Soul Reaper movie. It doesn't really pick any direction. A couple of scenes are funny, some other are clearly meant to be, scary and suspenseful, but most of them are just plain boring. So that in the end, it's not really a comedy, it's not really a horror movie, it's like a nothing burger. They should have just chose to make it, a parody or just a normal horror movie. That would have been much better. I think that's the biggest complaint I have about the movie, and that's probably what most people are gonna notice when they first watch it. They don't really understand. I made my girlfriend watch this movie because I wanted her to suffer with me. For about, the first 30 minutes, she was like, yo, this is like a comedy, this is like a parody. And then by the end, she was like, I have no clue. This is just boring, this is nothing, And the thing that kills me actually is that the actors seem pretty good at doing comedy skits. Ian in the final scenes is awesome, it's really funny. And the guys at the pub, it's good comedy, it's not that bad. It's just the main chunk with the main cast that kinda sucks. Also, is the entirety of the Carl storyline meant to be a joke? Is it all meant to be like a setup to the final scene to be a joke? Because it doesn't work at all. I mean, it would have made more sense if we saw more of him and if he was actually established as the supposed hero of the story early on. But like this, you just kind of forget about him for half the movie and then he comes back, and by the end you don't even care. Also, just because I've been thinking about this movie way too much, but am I tripping, or is Carl actually the main bad guy of this movie? I mean, he technically wants the world to end. By that I mean he wants to stop the sacrifice, so the ancient gods inside Earth's core will get mad, rise, and kill everybody. We can all agree that it is bad, or, oh, wait, I think Sam Altman has something to say about this.
I think AI will probably, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
So then that means that Ian and Charlie and eventually Jeff are actually the heroes of the story? Because if they didn't organize this whole thing, the world would have ended. So they're technically the good guys, even though they're assholes, especially Ian. He's a funny asshole though. But the real question is why, Charlie? Why? Why couldn't you just abduct some random migrant worker who nobody gives a shit about instead of your high school friends? Wouldn't he still want them around? Does he just hate them? Because it doesn't seem like he hates Tina. It seems like he actually loves her. So why would he choose her to be fed to these ancient creatures as like a sacrifice? And I know that the fact that it's a bachelor party and it's his old friends, it's to make it easier on them to organize the whole thing. But I can imagine that calling up 9 local hookers would have been much more difficult. Also, this movie is really good at not tying up loose ends. Remember the painting of the old man? The one signed Soul Reaper? Yeah, that was never explained. I guess that was just Ian who was maybe trying to become a painter and signed himself Soul Reaper in a suspicious red color. I mean, he takes his job very seriously, man. That's like method acting, man. That's good stuff. And another thing, if you remember, when Alex is in the bathroom throwing up because of the cider he's given in the pub, he says he saw Charlie outside when we clearly saw it was a shadow. In the end, that was... What was that? Was that just a shadow? Was that Ian, maybe? Was that meant to be Jeff? We don't know. We never know. I know I've talked about this so much already in the summary, but was Steve meant to be high after Charlie gave him some of those mysterious pills before going to the lake? Was that drugs? Because if that would have been Alex, I would have told you, yes, that's drugs. We know that because Alex smokes weed. But Steve is portrayed as like a party pooper who doesn't even want to get drunk at the lake. So what? That's bad, but casually popping a Xan is alright? I know I have rambled about plot holes and plot points for a while, but I think now I can pass on to something more technical. And of course I'm talking about the special effects implied in the movie. And there's exactly 2. For both the fight scene with Carl and Paul at the beginning of the movie, and then in the ritual scene at the end when everybody's thrown inside the portal. And I sincerely don't know what to say. These are incredibly bad. So bad, in fact, one has to wonder if they're not, ironic, if it's not like satirical. The first ever time I finished the movie, after watching the ritual scene where everybody's thrown inside the portal, I was like, alright, so the movie knows what it's doing, right? This is meant to be, a joke. It's meant to be like a meta joke. But no, guys, it's not said anywhere in any website, in any interview. It's not a joke. This movie is meant to be, somewhat serious. But by far, the most annoying thing about the movie is how dark it is. I watched it in my living room on my couch with the blinds all the way closed, and some scenes I couldn't see at all. I had to, pause, go back, watch it, slow, whatever. It's just so dark, and I hope you managed to see as much as you could from the recording that I have. It's not me, guys, it's the movie. It's very dark. Some scenes you cannot see at all, basically. Other than these 2 things, I don't really have many complaints about the visuals of the movie. I think some of these, camera shots were actually kind of interesting, fun to look at. I would say good, but I'm not qualified. I have no clue what I'm doing. I saved a little extra space here at the end because I feel like you forgot, but I of course haven't. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said I looked at the trivia page for the movie on IMDB and saw that the director, Bob Pipe, had left a comment saying that this movie was his direct response to the UK Brexit fiasco. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, that's fine, Bob. I would like to expand a little bit on this claim because there's no interviews, there's nothing on this movie. It's not really a popular movie. There's not, you can search it up online. There's like the IMDB page, then there's the Netflix page, and that's basically it, you know? So my question was, does the movie actually have a parallel to the UK Brexit stuff, or was he just talking out of his ass? We shall find out now. And of course I know the basics about the 2016 Brexit. I'm not like hard, but I'm not really into any details. So I asked the smartest person that I know, ChatGPT. So here is what it said. Right after dogging on the movie plot for being so shitty and filled with plot holes, it said that the most striking resemblance to the UK Brexit thing is the concept of having a sacrifice in order to not have it worse later, which was one of the major rhetorics used by people that said that getting out of the United Nations early was gonna be tough, but then in the future was gonna be better for the country. And granted, this is ChatGPT's interpretation. This is not coming from me. I know nothing about politics and stuff. And of course, this is not what Bob Pipe thought about when making the movie. But if there's some other hidden message, it flew over my head and ChatGPT's head, so maybe it wasn't as clear, dude. Either way, I think I kind of see the resemblance. It's a very broad thing and not really a direct response, if you ask me. So I feel like Bob Pipe just had like a movie in his hands, and then he wanted to make it about politics for whatever reason. I don't know, he was pro-Brexit, he was against the Brexit, I have no clue. Either way, this doesn't really change my stance about the movie or the director. We can now all agree that Soul Reaper, not a masterpiece, not worthy of like an Oscar or anything like that. In fact, if you go on Google and search it up, on the IMDb site it's rated just a 2.3 out of 10, which, you know, it is what it is, Bob. And I know you guys are dying to know what my rating is, because you care about me, right? You're not just listening to this while playing, you know, Roblox Tycoons. You do care about me. Anyways, I would be a little bit more gentle than the IMDb site. I would give it a 3 out of 10. It's not that bad. I mean, it's really bad, right? It's boring, but there's a couple of scenes that are really funny, and I think if you got together with like a couple of friends, you maybe had like a couple of drinks or a doobie or whatever and watched it, it could make you laugh. I think it could. And I see some value in that, and I think that's worthy of at least like a 3 out of 10. In conclusion, is this the worst horror movie ever made? No. I'm sure there is worse garbage out there made with like $12 and a camcorder and 2 cracked out guys from college. But I will challenge you to go on Netflix and find a worst horror movie. I feel like that is impossible. I feel like this has to be the worst movie on there. I have no clue why it's on there. I hope it stays there. That said, even though I know I don't have this kind of reach, but please, if by some miracle somebody sees this video and gets to this part, don't go and harass any of the people involved into making this movie. Bob Pipe and all the other actors and stuff. It's not a good movie. It's not a war crime. If you really have to do something, go and throw like a pipe bomb at a manifestation. I have no clue. Please be kind to me as well, because this is kind of the first long form video I've made that I've put some actual effort into. A special thanks if you stayed this long into the video. And if you like content like this, you should subscribe and hit the bell and stay tuned for some new content about stuff like this. Bye. Basta fanculo.